Hey, welcome everyone. I'm so excited to be meeting today with Regina Heidenreich from Munich, Germany. He's a past volunteer with La Esperanza Granada. Welcome, Gina. Thank you, Regina. Sorry. Welcome, Regina. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It's an honor. Thank you.
I'm so excited to talk with you today. As you know, I haven't actually been down to Nicaragua in many years, and you've been there quite recently. So I'm excited to hear more from you about what it was like. So I want you to first start out just by telling us why Nicaragua? Like, how did you get involved with choosing Nicaragua as a place to be a volunteer?
Well, there's a long and a short version to the story, but basically my husband and I already had a connection with Nicaragua and we were looking for a place to volunteer long term. And that's when we approached La Esperanza because we felt that they could use the skills that we had to offer. I am a high school English teacher by profession, so I thought it would be, I knew that they had an English program, and because there was quite a severe shortage of volunteers due to the crisis in 2018, they welcomed us with open arms, and so that's how we ended up volunteering with La Esperanza.
Do you mind if I ask what's your personal connection to Nicaragua?
Sure, absolutely. So my husband and I founded a small charity in Germany in 2018, shortly before the protests down there started, together with a few close friends. The name of the organization is Niños de Nicaragua, and we support projects in the areas of education and health for children and youth in Nicaragua. And I will say it's a very small charity. It's all very small, on a very small scale, but we now have 3 partner organizations that we work with and whose projects we support with donations and fundraisers. And one of them is La Esperanza Granada.
Very nice. So you went there after some of the political unrest and protests. What was it like when you got there?
Now, I will say it was my first time in Nicaragua, so I couldn't really compare it to what it was like before then. So I can only base it off of what people were telling me. I will say that we did feel some trepidation before going down there, but I felt perfectly safe in Granada at all times. And so everyone was telling me that things were really down compared to what it had been like, a year ago, 2 years ago, in terms of the tourism industry. And obviously, once I started working more closely with the organization, I learned a lot about how people have been affected by the socioeconomic crisis in Nicaragua. But for us, from a volunteer perspective, it was really nice, to be honest, because for anyone who's been to Granada, you know that there is a lot of infrastructure there. There's a lot of fun things that you can do in your spare time. We did have a pretty tight-knit group of volunteers while we were there. And I met some really, really amazing people who I had a lot of fun with and some of whom I'm still in contact with. And it felt nice to make a real difference, not to be one in a huge crowd of volunteers, but to really feel like you're having an impact. So it was an amazing experience. I'll say that we think of it so fondly.
You were there at a very special time. You were there sort of in between when the political unrest and the protests were happening and when COVID started and you had to leave. What would you say was the spirit of the people while you were there?
Do you mean the Nicaraguan people?
Nicaraguan people. When you worked with the children, when you worked with the families, when you worked with the staff that are there, did they welcome you openly? Were they excited to be connected with you?
Definitely. I'd say that people were very excited and they're happy to have us. It felt special in a way because volunteer numbers have been down so much compared to what it used to be like, at least from what I was told. And so I think on the one hand, people were maybe a bit, I don't know, maybe a bit unsure of what the future was going to hold, which I think is understandable. But there was a great amount of interest in us. And yeah, I remember many great conversations with the educadores at the learning centers, and also with my colleagues, the teachers at the high school where I later volunteered as well. So yeah, there is a great amount of openness. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about what you did while you were there. And what I'm particularly interested in is what do you feel was your biggest contribution?
Now I do want to say that I do want, you know, I think volunteering can also be a very humbling experience, because when you first come to a different country, you maybe have all of these ideas in your head of, you know, how things could be done or how things could be improved. And I think it's important to bring a certain humility to any situation and really understand that you're in a different culture, in a different school system, maybe a different environment. So, you know, I really don't want to overstate my contribution. But I worked as an English teacher in one of the learning centers for a short amount of time. And I think with the volunteers with the English program, it's really important to have some continuity. And I was able to provide that. So I took over from somebody, and then somebody took over from me. And even since I was friends with all the volunteers, I was able to like check up on individual kids and like, oh, how is Marco doing? And it was great to hear how much they were progressing. So I'm hoping that that some of the excitement and some of the fun that I was able to see in these kids' eyes in the classroom, that, you know, that stuck with them, and that they maybe you know, took that love of learning a different language, or that interest that stuck with them in a way.
Beautiful.
That would have been nice. It was also, I also really appreciated all of the opportunities that I had of interacting with the educadores. I was able to contribute on a few of the life skill sessions that they did. For example, the one on, I did a little part in the one on gender equality, and I translated during part of the sessions on stress management. And for me personally, that was just a very enriching experience, because, you know, these are such wonderful young people. And they, you know, I think the trajectory that these people go through is just so inspiring, and they bring so much hope to this community and give so much back to the community. So that was just a real privilege. And I'd love to think that, you know, maybe they found our interactions somewhat enriching as well.
I have no doubt. I have no doubt. Can you think of a moment in time, an interaction that you had with one of the kids there, or something that kind of is the quintessential takeaway for you from having volunteered with La Esperanza Granada?
So I remember, you know, I remember very different moments actually. So for example, from my relatively short period in the learning centers, I remember when I was teaching the kids about fruit. Mm-hmm. And I was fortunate because I was able to bring a lot of pretty good teaching material with me from Germany. And so, you know, I had like a game that was based on fruit and lots of songs. And we were able to combine it with the colors and with the numbers. It was pretty cool. And then, you know, sort of as a wrap up, I decided to buy all of that fruit, like as much as I could get in Nicaragua, and bring it to the center, so they couldn't just see the picture, but actually look at the real fruit. And you should have seen these kids' eyes. They're just, I mean, some of the fruit, like apples, to them is just so exotic. And you know, I was like, you know, would anybody like to try? And they thought that I was kidding them, because they thought it was fake. They thought it was made out of plastic.
Oh, wow.
They had never seen that fruit before. And that was really cool, like to see their, you know, their joy. And I especially enjoy seeing how much they got out of the, you know, the fun parts of the lesson, because teaching in Nicaragua in public schools tends to be, you know, classes are huge. There's lots of children in one classroom. So there really isn't a lot of room for, you know, more interactive or, you know, more fun approaches, and they love that. So especially the singing or anything to do with movement or role play. I remember one time I made like I built like a TV frame out of an old box, and the kids got to be like in a TV program. They got to pretend that they were a famous person. We interviewed each other, you know, things like, what's your name? Where are you from? What's your favorite animal? And they just loved that. And we're so proud. So these are the moments that are really going to stay with me with the little kids. And also, you know, how affectionate they were. And as a teacher, that's sometimes a bit of a weird situation because you're trying to be professional and keep a distance, but they were just so excited to see you. And that really warmed my heart. That is very nice.
They're very loving children.
Yeah. And then with the high school program, there were a lot of really touching moments. Especially because I had a bit of a double role. So I worked there as an English teacher, but I was also in charge of the administrative side of things. And so there were a lot of really...
Sorry, do you mean the administrative side of things for the high school program?
For the high school program
Okay.
in La Esperanza. So the sponsorship program that La Esperanza has for the Nueva Esperanza High School. And so I remember, like, for the fundraisers that we did, I would interview students, sometimes also informally, to sort of find out how the high school program had impacted their life, you know, because we were interested in finding out how much of a difference we were making. And that was mind-blowing to me, because a lot of students told me very honestly that they would have dropped out a long time ago if it hadn't been for their sponsorship. And that the reason that they're finishing high school is because their sponsor continued to support them. And some of these kids are now university students that are still supported by La Esperanza. And so having these insights and being able to connect that to a personal story and to a face of a student that you're seeing in the classroom was just a mind-blowing experience. And I won't deny that there are some experiences that were also very touching, but in a way that, you know, yeah, very touching. For example, I remember that one time a student stayed after class and asked me whether he could have one of my pencils. No, actually, it was two guys that came up to me, and the one asked me whether his friend could have one of my pencils, because I'm always losing my stuff, so I had a whole bunch. I had like 10 pencils or something. And I was like, well, why doesn't your friend ask me himself? You know, why are you speaking for this other kid? And he goes, because he's ashamed to ask. Because he doesn't have a pencil and he's ashamed to ask. And you know, these things to us, I would barely even register a pencil as a possession of mine, because it's just, there's always more available. It's something that, you know, if I lend a pencil to you, I might not even ask for it back because I have 10 more. And the idea that something like that can be a real difficulty for someone who's trying to attend school and trying to take notes. It's just, yeah, just mind-blowing to me. So I was very impressed sort of by the resilience of the students at the high school, their willingness to overcome adversity, to stick with it even when it was difficult. That impressed me very much.
And also something that really stands out for me is that that if they feel ashamed of something, it doesn't stop them from leaning on others for support.
Yeah.
Whether it's to ask a friend to get a pencil for them, or it's to just avail themselves of the services that La Esperanza offers.
Yeah. And so with the high school program, I think the contribution that I maybe did make during that time is that, first of all, I hope I was able to ensure a good transition to Roberto, who then took over as the manager of operations. And I introduced a lot of some like organizational things in the high school program. For example, that attendance was being kept regularly of the students that showed up, which was it was a bit of a game changer, I think, for the kids there, that there is more accountability, and that there was, we put on a movie night as a reward for the kids that had turned up regularly. And, you know, I brought my microwave to the school and we made popcorn and watched a movie. And that was, you know, that was really nice for them sort of at the end of the school year to be able to come together and do that and, you know, have a snack and watch a movie. It's such an everyday thing, but that was very nice for them, I hope.
Well,
And
it's nice for them because obviously attendance is very important in terms of their success. It's nice for the sponsors, right? It's nice for the sponsors to know that there are people down there who are supporting their kids that they're sponsoring to succeed.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, exactly. So these opportunities to connect the kids with the sponsors and to be able to share their stories. Yeah, that's
you
definitely
had
very nice.
such a nice mix of administrative time spent there as well as direct service to the kids. It's kind of I know that's for me as a volunteer, that's my dream, is that I get to mix my skill set, which is more administrative, with my interpersonal connection with the people that I'm serving, which is such a gift, both directions. So a question for you is, what for your personal life has the gift been? How has it been a gift to you, and how have you taken it with you back to Germany, having worked with the organization?
That's a good question. So first of all, I really want to express my gratitude towards La Esperanza and especially towards Cindy, who was managing the organization at the time, because she really trusted me a great deal, and she really extended an amazing opportunity for me and an opportunity to grow as a person. And so I can never thank her for that enough. Just wanted to get that off my chest. And in terms of growth, I think it really helped me grow in empathy as a teacher, even back home. That it's so important to, you know, find out what students' backgrounds are and what things they might be struggling with that you're not aware of, and that there's often several explanations for problems that might be surfacing at school, but really come from somewhere else. And that has really helped me in my teaching. Also, as a teacher, I used to always be very dismissive of administrative stuff at school. I was like, oh, all these lists I have to keep, my God. And I really appreciated the value of that after having been in Nicaragua, you know, that there's like an attendance list, or that you know where kids live, what their address is, or that there's some sort of protocol if a kid doesn't show up to school for several days. All of these things that to you, as someone who's passionate about their subject, seems like a bit of a nuisance, to sort of see the value in all of that. That's definitely helpful.
Yeah.
But I've also really benefited from the administrative side of things as well, in the running of our own charity, for sure. And I recently switched to working in the Ministry of Education here in Germany. And especially when I started out there, I thought back to La Esperanza all the time, which I guess isn't a compliment to the the Bavarian Ministry of Education, that my work there reminds me of working for a small NGO in Nicaragua, but it did. So all the administrative insights that I got were very valuable to me. And, you know, also this was like the first time that I was in a position where, you know, I sort of had a team to work with and other teachers to sort of supervise, at least as part of the afternoon program. Obviously, what they did in the morning was none of my business. So that was also an opportunity for me to grow in a leadership role. And that was, yeah, very cool.
So it sounds like you increased your skills, your leadership skills, your administrative skills, but also it sounds like, and this is true of many times that we volunteer, is we increase our capacity for empathy. You know, your empathy for your students, your empathy for the administrators where you work. Just anytime we volunteer, it does seem to, it grows our hearts, it grows our ability to see the world from another person's eyes. And it's an invitation for anyone who's watching today to come and volunteer with us, and check out La Esperanza if you haven't already. And for those of you who are listening right now who have volunteered in the past, I know this is resonating with you. I know that you're also feeling like your experience down in Nicaragua expanded your ability to connect with other human beings in all areas of your life. So Thank you so much, Regina, for all of the work that you put in down in Nicaragua, and also, you know, the contribution that you are to the students that you encounter and the people that you encounter in your work today. And thank you for taking the time for meeting with me. It's been a pleasure.
Same here. Thanks for meeting with me.
Take care. I just have to figure out how to end this.